A leak of unprecedented scale has just exposed Iran's global shadow economy. The entire system is compromised. Billions in dark money funding every proxy war from Yemen to Lebanon, laid bare for the world to see. But with the whole network now bleeding data, the critical question is no longer how they did it. It is whether the United States is about to trigger a financial kill switch that could collapse the Iranian regime in a matter of days. This is not a minor breach. This is a strategic catastrophe for Tehran. We are not talking about thousands of documents or a handful of leaked emails. We are talking about millions of files, terabytes of raw data, encrypted ledgers, bank transfer records, shipping manifests, and front company ownership documents. It is the entire financial nervous system of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, and its Expeditionary Quds Force, exposed. For years, intelligence agencies have tracked fragments of this network. A shell company here, a sanctioned oil tanker going dark there, but they only saw the shadows on the cave wall. This leak is like turning on the floodlights. It details the precise, step-by-step mechanisms Iran uses to bypass international sanctions and move massive sums of cash across the globe. It is the playbook, the blueprint for funding a global insurgency. Every dollar that armed a Houthi fighter, every euro that paid for a Hezbollah missile, every yuan that supplied a drone to a militia in Iraq. The transaction history is now in the open. This shadow economy was designed for one purpose: to fuel Iran's doctrine of asymmetric warfare. Unable to match the United States or its allies conventionally, Iran projects power through a network of proxies. These groups are its forward defense, its sword, and its shield. But they are expensive. They require a constant flow of weapons, training, and cash. This ghost network was the heart, pumping financial lifeblood to the farthest reaches of its empire, keeping them loyal, armed, and ready to act on Tehran's orders. It allowed Iran to wage war by proxy, insulating itself from direct retaliation while destabilizing the entire region. The leak reveals a three-tiered system of staggering complexity. The first tier is the ghost fleet, over 150 aging tankers, many purchased for scrap, repurposed to move sanctioned Iranian crude oil. These ships engage in sophisticated deception. They turn off their AIS transponders for days at a time, vanishing from global tracking systems. They conduct risky ship-to-ship transfers of oil in the dead of night, often in international waters in the South China Sea or the Indian Ocean. The leaked data includes the real-time codes and methods they use to spoof their identities, appearing as legitimate cargo ships from Panama, while secretly offloading millions of barrels of oil to a willing, or willfully ignorant, buyer. The second tier is the corporate maze, a sprawling, interconnected web of hundreds of shell companies registered in jurisdictions with lax oversight. Hong Kong, the Marshall Islands, the United Arab Emirates. These are not just empty mailboxes. They are active entities, engaging in seemingly legitimate trade. A company in Dubai might purchase medical supplies from a firm in Malaysia, but the transaction is wildly inflated. The excess millions are not for syringes. They are wired through a series of further cutouts until they land in an account accessible by a Quds Force operative in Beirut. The third tier is the enablers, a network of smaller, often complicit, financial institutions in the Middle East and Asia. These banks, currency exchanges, and trading houses are willing to look the other way, processing transactions that larger, more scrutinized Western banks would flag immediately. They provide the final, crucial link in the chain, converting oil revenue held in foreign accounts into the hard cash needed on the ground. The leak names names. It lists account numbers. It provides transaction dates and amounts down to the last cent. But new intelligence, just breaking in the last few hours, has dramatically escalated this crisis. Sources inside the United States Treasury Department have not only confirmed the authenticity of the vast majority of the leaked data, they have given their internal analysis a codename: Operation Chimera. The name is telling. A chimera is a monster made of disparate parts. That is exactly what they have found. And they have also found the man who built the monster. The files point to one individual as the architect of this global ghost network: Brigadier General Rostam Ghasemi, a shadowy figure within the IRGC's Quds Force. Ghasemi is not a frontline soldier. He is a financial warfare mastermind. A former oil minister, he blended his knowledge of the global energy markets with the Quds Force's expertise in clandestine operations. He is the ghost in the machine, the man who transformed sanctions evasion from a simple act of survival into a sophisticated instrument of national power. The leak contains his personal correspondence, his directives, and even voice notes arranging specific transfers. He is now the most wanted economic combatant on the planet. Understanding the mechanics of Ghasemi's network is critical. Consider a single transaction detailed in the leak. From May of 2023, it begins with the tanker, Starlight Zenith, a vessel officially flagged to Liberia but secretly owned by an IRGC front company. It turns off its transponder in the Strait of Malacca. For 6 days, it is a ghost. It reappears 700 miles away, its hull 5 feet lower in the water, heavy with an undeclared 2 million barrels of Iranian light crude. That oil is transferred to a Chinese teapot refinery, a privately owned facility willing to bend the rules. The payment, a sum of nearly $150 million, is not made in dollars, which are easily traceable. It is made in Chinese yuan into the account of a Hong Kong-based tech company called Celestial Dynamic Imports. This company, according to its official paperwork, trades in semiconductors. It does not. The leak shows its entire business history is fabricated. It exists only on paper. From Celestial Dynamic, the money is chopped up. 20 million is wired to a Turkish construction firm building a resort in Syria, a resort which intelligence confirms is actually a fortified bunker for an Iraqi Shia militia. Another 30 million is moved to a currency exchange in Dubai, where it is withdrawn in cash and moved by courier to Yemen to fund Houthi operations. The rest is laundered through dozens of smaller transactions, gold purchases, overpriced textile imports, fake consulting fees, until it is clean, untraceable, and ready to be deployed anywhere in the world. Now multiply that single transaction by 1,000. That is the scale of Operation Chimera. This intricate web of deception functioned flawlessly for years, a testament to its design. But how could a network this vast, touching dozens of countries and involving hundreds of entities, stay hidden for so long? The answer revealed in the data is more disturbing than the network itself. It was not just hidden. In many cases, it was simply ignored. The leak suggests a level of willful blindness within certain sectors of the global economy. Shipping insurers who saw a vessel's suspicious activity but continued its policy to collect the premiums. Port authorities who accepted forged documents because challenging them would disrupt trade. Commodity brokers who bought oil at a steep discount with a don't ask, don't tell policy. This was not direct state-level collusion. It was something more insidious, a quiet, profit-driven complicity that created the gray zones and loopholes for Ghasemi's network to thrive in. The system did not fail. It worked as intended for those who were benefiting. This revelation changes the entire strategic calculus for Washington. The problem is not just a single rogue state. It is the ecosystem that allows the rogue state to act. This brings us back to the kill switch. For the first time, the United States doesn't have to just sanction Iran. It has the data, the names, accounts, and ship numbers to sanction the entire global network that enables Iran. The buyers, the shippers, the insurers, the banks, everyone. A financial kill switch of this magnitude would be unprecedented. It would involve a coordinated, overnight blacklisting of hundreds of companies and individuals across the globe. It would mean seizing assets, from bank accounts in Singapore to tankers in the mid-Atlantic. It would be a declaration of full-spectrum economic warfare, not just on Tehran, but on all its enablers. The immediate effect on Iran would be catastrophic. Without its shadow economy, the flow of funds to its proxies would not just slow, it would stop. The Iranian rial would hyperinflate into worthlessness within weeks. The regime, already facing domestic pressure, could find itself unable to pay its own security forces. It could be a fatal blow, but the risks are enormous. Such a move would send a shockwave through the global economy. Oil prices could spike to over $200 a barrel, triggering a worldwide recession. Key trading partners, especially China, would view it as a massive overreach of American power, accelerating efforts to de-dollarize the global financial system. And then there is the military dimension. A cornered and desperate Iran is an unpredictable one, facing imminent economic collapse. Would the regime lash out? Would it attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point for nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil? Inside the White House, the debate is reportedly fierce. Sources indicate the National Security Council is split. The hawks, primarily in the Pentagon, argue this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to cripple the IRGC without firing a single shot. They are urging the president to authorize the kill switch immediately. The doves, centered in the State Department and Treasury, are warning of unpredictable second and third-order effects. They argue for a more gradual, targeted approach, using the data as leverage rather than a sledgehammer. But the decision may have already been made for them. Intelligence just received timestamped less than 1 hour ago, shows 3 of Iran's IRGC Navy fast attack craft breaking from their standard patrol formation in the Strait of Hormuz. They are not on any scheduled exercise. They are moving at high speed towards the narrowest point of the world's most critical oil choke point. And their transponders have just gone dark. Was this it? The preemptive strike everyone feared? For 45 agonizing minutes, the Pentagon's watch floor held its breath. Then, just as suddenly, the boat slowed, turned, and headed back to port. A feint, a deliberate provocation to test American response times. But as the immediate crisis cooled, a far deeper one was just beginning to ignite. Because the Chimera leak had one last, horrifying secret. Buried deep in the data's metadata, a digital watermark that was almost missed, was a message, and it revealed the unthinkable truth. The leak wasn't a leak, it was a plant. Why would Iran hand its enemies the keys to its own financial kingdom? The answer is, it didn't. The data was engineered and released by a dissident faction within the IRGC itself. The entire network, Operation Chimera, wasn't just Iran's shadow economy. It was the personal financial empire of a specific, hardline group of rival commanders. They didn't leak their country's secrets. They leaked their enemies, and they just baited the United States into becoming the hammer to smash their internal rivals for them. The White House was no longer debating a strike against an enemy. It was debating whether to pull the trigger in a stranger's civil war. The kill switch was no longer a tool of American foreign policy. It was a weapon handed to them by one group of fanatics to annihilate another. To use it would mean crowning a new, unknown, and potentially far more dangerous power base in Tehran. A faction cunning enough to manipulate a superpower into acting as its own private army. The choice facing the president was now a strategic nightmare. Option 1. Deploy the kill switch. Cripple the old guard of the IRGC, but in doing so, knowingly consolidate power for a new, faceless cabal that had just demonstrated terrifying strategic brilliance. Option 2. Do nothing. Let Operation Chimera continue, appearing weak on the world stage and allowing the original threat to persist, all while holding a weapon they now knew was a trap. This is the new reality of 21st century conflict. The battle is no longer between nations, but between networks. It is a world of fractured states and sub-state actors, where internal power struggles can spill across the globe, turning enemies into unwitting allies. The Chimera leak wasn't just data. It was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare, proving that a line of code can be more devastating than a carrier strike group. The front line is no longer a trench dug in the sand. It's in the metadata of a leak. It's in the quiet complicity of a shipping insurer. It's in the impossible choice forced upon a president in the middle of the night. The war is already here. We just haven't recognized the battlefield. And as Washington is now learning, in a war this complex, the most dangerous thing you can do is believe you are the one in control. The old fronts are collapsing. To understand the new ones, you need to go deeper. Subscribe to breaking_the_front, and we'll show you where the real lines are drawn.